What's up, guys? Your favorite player one, Richard here, and we are back with another video in my barrel bar build series. In the last video, I focused primarily on preparing the exterior of the barrel. So standing, making sure that we secure the staves to the rings, and ultimately getting the barrel cut in half vertically. And although that was a huge milestone, I still have a laundry list of things to do before we can say that this project is done. From removing the char from the inside of the barrel to re-securing the barrel heads, making shelves, making tops and bottoms, and everything that will happen in between. So the goal for this video is to try to get as much done as possible. I set the goal for myself to get this done before the end of the summer. For me, that is when my kids go back to school. So only a couple more weeks to try to get this build done. So enough talking. Let's go ahead and get back to building. Now that the barrel is split in half, we're going to use a couple of methods to remove the char from the inside of the barrel. The first thing I'm going to do is just run a pass with my wire brush over the insides of both parts. And you can see by just gingerly brushing across the top, a lot of that char will come off. And so you can see here's kind of a before and after. Now I could take it down a lot farther, and we're going to do that just a little bit more with my wire brush just to kind of knock back some of that extra particulate. But I don't want to get it all the way back down to being in its original stave color. Just enough so that way if we're moving this or reaching in, even when I seal it, I don't want any of that particulate to come off. And you can see the difference. Here's the one before the wire brush and the one after. Now, if you recall at the end of my last video, I said that I almost immediately ran into several hiccups shortly after having cut the barrel in half. And with at least one of those, I tried to take some preventative measures, but it just didn't take. Now, the first hiccup occurred with the barrel head itself. So like I had shared before, a barrel is comprised of several different staves that are just held together with rings. And the same is said with the barrel head. So as you can see, there are individual just pieces of wood that are held together with this kind of tongue and groove pattern. Once it's secured into the barrel, it's pressure that is keeping all of this together. Now, I knew that once I was to split the barrel, there's a chance that these pieces were going to separate. So as a preventative measure, I put a piece of plywood there, just hoping that everything would be kept together. Well, unfortunately, if you use crappy materials, you're going to get crappy results. And that's exactly what happened. Almost immediately after I had taken these barrel heads off and just kind of set them to the side, they started to peel up from the piece of plywood that's here on the underhand side, and the pieces of the barrel head started to split. So remedying that actually isn't too complicated. I just used a little bit of wood glue. You can see that it's already starting to dry here, and some pressure to keep everything in place. So this should be good. I'm going to let this one dry a little bit longer before we go ahead and split it. Now you'll notice that I have some ratchet straps on here, and this is because of the second hiccup that I ran into once I had the barrel in half. And this actually occurred maybe a day or two after. I started to notice that the barrel itself started to kind of, instead of holding that round shape, slowly started to kind of open up. And I'm wondering if part of it had to do with there still being some liquid into the staves themselves, as well as the rings just kind of naturally wanting to straighten out. So to remedy that, what I've done, at least until I can get the barrel heads back in place, is ratchet strap them pretty close to their original shape. I actually took the other side of the barrel, put them side by side with the ratchet straps attached, and I think that they're pretty much almost in the same shape. Our barrel head had time to dry and cure, and so we are ready to go ahead and cut it in half. Now, one of the things that I recommend that you do if you decide to do this project yourself is to make sure that you label not only your barrel, but also your barrel head. So you can see here I had TAL, TBL, and that simply means that this is the top of the barrel, side A, left-hand side. Top of the barrel, side B, left-hand side. And then the same thing over here. So that way when I come back to the barrel, that I know which side I'm going to secure this to. And just so you can see the same thing over here, I did the same thing on the barrel. So TBL, top, side B, left, and then over here, TBR, top, side B, right side of the barrel. All right, we are ready to get the barrel heads back in. And this sounds a lot easier than what it actually is. Now you can see that we have just a little groove here for the barrel head to slide back in. But if you remember earlier, I told you that the center of these things wanted to bow out, and even some of the staves themselves started to separate. You can see a little bit of separation there on the end between the plywood and the barrel head. But what we should end up doing is just sliding this into those individual grooves. I am going to use my little clamp there to help secure it into place, and then we'll come back behind it with some screws just to make sure everything is nice and tight and won't move. All right, so as I mentioned, we're going to be just putting the barrel head here in this little crease, but just to kind of add some extra support, we are going to screw this in, but we'll go ahead and add some wood glue here just to kind of help make sure that everything adheres as it should. So barrel head goes back into the little slot. Now we'll come back behind with the hammer just on the ends, little rubber mallet, make sure everything is right where it needs to be. Now, as extra support, I'm going to just take my little clamp here, clamp everything where it needs to be. This will just help make sure that the barrel head is also down. And then we'll come back behind it with some screws after everything is lined up, which it looks like it is. Now, I don't have a drill bit that I can use to screw in the metal, just like I did before. So what I'm actually going to do is take some of these self-tapping screws, and I'm going to use that to create essentially a little pilot hole here that I can then come back behind and screw things in with. Now, I went ahead and did a couple of things that I didn't really feel were necessary to film. And the first thing that I did was I put 2 coats of polyurethane on the inside of both of these barrels. Now, it isn't necessary, but I just felt like it would just make the inside of the barrels look a lot nicer. Now, the next thing that I did, we'll come over here, is going to be, I went ahead and painted the rings. Now, they were originally gray. I knocked all the rust off. You probably remember there was some blue here. I just wanted to mask off the wood so I wouldn't get any paint on the actual metal. We will stain this later, and we'll talk about that when we get to that point. But I chose to use just spray paint. This hammered black I really like because I don't know if you can see it or not. It adds a bit of texture. This looks really cool on this barrel, and I feel like once the whole project looks or is completed, it's going to look really nice. All right, I am ready to move on to the next part of the barrel build, which is going to focus primarily on the shelves. Now, the first thing I need to decide is exactly how many shelves I'm going to put into each part of the barrel. Now, what I've decided to do is actually 2 different options. Now, the first one is to simply figure out the midpoint of one of the sides of the barrel. And that is going to be where I put that one and only shelf. That's going to allow me to just put any and every bottle that I want in there, no matter
the size. Now, the biggest size that I have, at least in my collection, is going to just be that tube that you typically get with your E.H. Taylor. So the midpoint is going to end up being more than enough space to accommodate that. Now with this one, I'm doing something a little bit different. I want to have 2 shelves. And the thought process behind that is I would love to have a space where I can keep my glasses and my Glencairns. Now, if I were to have both of these barrels side by side, the first shelf and the middle shelf of the other one are actually going to be about the same spacing. So in this particular barrel, from the base to where I want the first shelf is going to be about 15 inches, which is more than enough space to accommodate that E.H. Taylor tube. I think the only other thing that I have is about that size is going to be that Sazerac 100 proof liter bottle, but that'll probably stay inside. Now the next space is going to be about 10.5 inches. Now this is perfect for keeping medium-sized bottles. So things like the Jack Daniel's 10-year, Stag, R&D, those 375 mil bottles will have more than enough space here with a little bit of wiggle room to grab them. And then lastly, a little bit more than 5 3/4 inches here on the top. Now this is more than enough space to keep our Glencairns and our other glasses. Now, I didn't just come over here and all willy-nilly and just kind of draw lines. I really did take time to measure the different spaces. So the first thing that I did was find kind of the midpoint here in my barrel. Now the distance is a little bit more than 20 inches from side to side. So midpoint here is going to end up being a little bit more than 10 inches. So the entire space is about 31.5 inches, give or take 1/8 of an inch. Now, I want the first one to be about 15 inches. So what I did was, instead of just moving everything around, I took a level, figured out where about 15 inches was for the top of the shelf, took a pencil and marked it. And there you go. Now, you'll notice that there are actually 2 lines here, and the reason for that is my shelves are going to be 3/4 of an inch. So once I figured out all of my spacing from the top, I went ahead and just measured down 3/4 of an inch and marked it there. All right, to now figure out just how big of a circle I need to cut for my shelves, I need to measure from the widest point of my line. So starting over here on this side, coming all the way over here, it's about 22.5 inches, maybe a little bit shorter. So when I'm ready to cut my circle, that's going to be the distance that I use. All right, so we have the circle cut out. You can see I have these little pieces here that are holding up our shelf. So now what I'm going to do is just kind of adjust it, make sure that it's level there. Just about level there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my pencil and then I will mark where it needs to go. All right, to test fit our shelf, what I've done is put just a couple of clamps where the lines should be, so that way our shelving is lined up with my pre-measured spaces. So just as a test fit, looks like we're pretty much on level. So the next step after I get the next one of our circles done is to put some little braces into the sides of the staves. That's just going to give something for the shelving to sit on. Now for the bracing, I'm just going to use a spare piece of 1x2 poplar that I had laying in the garage. Now I cut them into 3-inch segments. I feel like that's more than enough space for us to get 2 screws into to secure into the staves, and then we'll be able to drive a screw down here in the middle just to make sure that the shelf stays in place once we have it in. Now, just because I need some guidance, I drew some lines here at the 1 and 2 inch mark and then the halfway point. That way I know how to use my countersink, or where to use my countersink bit on my drill. Now the reason that I want to countersink these is because with them being so narrow, I don't want to split the wood when I go into drill. Plus I can go ahead and preload a screw in here. That's just going to help me with making sure that I can keep this balanced while it's being secure into the barrel. Now I went ahead and just painted my shelving black. With it being plywood, and since it's for me, there's no real reason to worry about trying to stain this and accent the wood. So I felt like black would just kind of come together with the inside of the barrel. As you can see, I went ahead and put the bracing blocks in, and this whole process really wasn't as challenging as I thought it was going to be, and I attribute that to pre-marking where my shelves were going to go. This really helped with getting everything lined up and doing the test fitting and making sure that I came back through and marked it with the pencil. Now, what I ended up doing first, before I even put the shelves in, was I went ahead and pre-drilled some screws into the front of these braces. And so that way, whenever I go to put it over here, I can just secure it. So I loosely screwed in one of the screws here directly under this line. Then I just took my shelving, laid it on top of here, and then with my other hand, I balanced it and making sure that it was level. Now, of course, I already marked it over here, but we know when working with wood, you want to measure twice and cut once. Same thing with securing bracing. So I just manipulated it to make sure that it was level here, secured in my other bracing, and then did the same thing from the side, which I don't know if you can see, but made sure that this back one was level. Did that with all of the other ones, and so it actually looks pretty good. Now the next step is going to be, and we'll do this here in just a second, is going to be just drilling a hole here into the top and then securing these shelves into place. All right, we are ready to go ahead and mount these shelves. Now, because I went ahead and painted this black, it's going to be kind of challenging to mark where I need to screw in, but we're just going to eyeball it. It's kind of hard to see, but I know that I have 2 screws in each one of these bracing pieces, so I'm just going to have to kind of guesstimate where I would need to drill first and then secure the screw. Now, I want to make sure that I drill first before I put the screw in. That way I won't have any splitting of the wood either on the shelf or on the block. All right, so I was able to accomplish quite a bit with this barrel bar build in this video. Now it took place over several days, in fact, probably a couple of weeks, but we were able to get it done. We removed the char from the inside of the barrel, reinstalled the barrel heads, created a couple of shelves, some blocking for it, got all that stained or sealed and finished and ready to go. And so we could technically leave the bar where it is right now. This actually looks really good from my opinion, but we're gonna do a couple more things to really clean this up. First thing in the next video that we're going to tackle is going to be facing here on the edges and on the middle. This is going to really just kind of clean up the entire build, bring it together and make it look nice. Then the last couple of things that we are going to do, create a top and a bottom that's really just going to join it and make it one solid piece. probably either stain it or seal it. I haven't decided yet. And then another thing I'm thinking about doing is adding just a little footer on the bottom. So if we're standing there socializing over a pour, if somebody's in the front of the bar, they have somewhere just to prop up their feet. So not a whole lot left in this build to do. So as always, thank you for sticking until the end. Be sure that you check back probably in another week or two. Hopefully we'll have this thing done by then. But as always, thank you again for watching. I'm your favorite player one, Richard. Have a good one.